Good evening or good morning, beautiful people, depending on when you're listening into the pod. This is the Mose Knows podcast. Just want to say thank you for being here. You know, your boys are always appreciative for you taking the time and listening to this. You can listen to anything throughout your day. And so I just want to say thank you. If you are here, of course, like, comment, subscribe, depending on when you're watching this or listening to this from Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, whatever it is, just share it. Please share it. I just want the word to get out more and more because we got some great content. And speaking about that, later on in the pod, you can hear a conversation with me and the Huntsville, that's kind of crazy. The Huntsville Item sports reporter for that newspaper down in Huntsville, Texas, Colton Foster. I was able to have a conversation with him just to talk about what the Bearkats are bringing to DKR on Saturday and how excited they are to face against the Longhorns and what to look out for if you're a Texas fan and players to look out for when it comes to playing Sam Houston State. For right now, though, let's just get into it. What's been happening this week? Of course, the conversation's been all about Arch Manning, right? When is he going to get it fixed? Is he hurt? Is he not hurt? Now the conversation has kind of turned into how is his mental capacity doing? Sounds like it's not doing that great, to be honest. They had to have Michael Taft sit with him during the press conference on Monday. That's something we've never seen Arch do. Arch is usually up there by himself, but to have Michael Taft with him to kind of be like it felt like a media shield, right, for Taft. Taft brought the energy. Taft tried to make it like somewhat enjoyable for Arch, it felt like. He was cracking jokes right when he came up to the room. And so I just feel like it's kind of starting to get to Arch, and you're starting to see it mentally. And with that conversation, though, since we're talking about it, Arch was asked during the press conference on Monday, do you think his struggles has been more physical or mental? And here's what he had to say to that question.
Arch, would you say what you're going through right now is more physical or mental?
Probably mental, to be honest. Like, I think I just need to go out there and play my game. I know the type of athlete and type of player I am. Just go cut it loose and have some fun, play ball.
And I think some of this is really good. You know, here's a guy who's had an awesome life. You know, he's the way he's grown up, where he played, the school he went to, the people he's been surrounded by. But I think you learn a lot about yourself through adversity and overcoming adversity and getting on the other side of adversity. And so to have some of this adversity that he has right now, and when he gets on the other side of it, I think all of this is going to serve not only well for him, but well for us as a team.
So he's honest. It's definitely more mental. I know Sarkisian also talked about that after the game against UTEP. He was mentioning how a lot of it is just mental. He's speeding himself up. He's maybe changing his mechanics mid-throw because he just has so much going on through his mind. And, of course, the boos from 100,000 people doesn't help when it comes to his mental space. So hopefully that Arch is getting the support that he needs. I know he talked about having dinner with his brother every Sunday has become a norm, which I think is a good thing. And I'm sure when Arch committed to Texas and his brother then followed, he didn't expect his brother to play this part of a role in his life, the supportive, emotional role. But now he's seeing the fruit of having a family member on campus with him doing something during a time in his life where you just heard Sarkisian talk about. It's probably the most adversity he's ever felt as a grown adult. So it's good to have your brother here with you. I don't have a brother, so I bet that's something to be cool and something to experience. Must be dope. I had a bunch of sisters, so having a brother here, I'm sure it helps out Arch a lot. But I'm hoping that as this conference starts to pick up, conference play starts to pick up, that he starts to figure some things out, because you have one last shot against Sam Houston. This is the final time that you can get this offense rolling, and if it's not looking good after Saturday night, there's going to be a lot of questions going into that game in the swamp against Florida. And mind you, they have their own questions to figure out after their performance last week against LSU. But I just want to stay on the topic of that, right? DJ Lagway struggled against LSU. Arch Manning, we know his struggles ever since week 1 against Ohio State. And I think you're seeing that trend around the whole college sphere with these young quarterbacks, or even quarterbacks that have been established, that are supposed to be the guys at the top of not just the SEC, but at the top of the nation. I think of a guy like Cade Klubnik, right, from Westlake. Supposedly could be the number 1 overall pick, hadn't really played like it. Another guy that had that type of potential, you could say, Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. he hasn't played that well. Lenora Sellers, he's having injury issues. The prodigies of DJ Lagway throwing 5 picks. Ugh, that's something I did not expect for him to ever do throughout this season. And then, of course, Arch. And I wonder if that's just a theme right now with developing quarterbacks. I feel like we're seeing a lot of guys that are supposed to be dudes that have these physical traits, and they're not really growing into what a lot of people thought they should be by this point. Now, I give Arch some leeway because this is his first true year as a starter. Even DJ Lagway, because he's got injured in the past. That is becoming an issue, though. His lingering issues week in and week out. You never know if he's going to be healthy. And now you double back, and his performance against LSU wasn't great to put on tape. And so what's going on with his development? Then you look at a Garrett Nussmeier. He's supposed to be the dude in LSU, but he's still struggling to make passes and see the field correctly. And Cade, man, if you watch that game against Georgia Tech, Cade looked bad. And he'll probably tell you that. Fumbles, interceptions, and it's just something you didn't want to see from a guy that's supposed to be number 1 draft pick in the draft. And so, yeah, I just don't know if that's a trend, or maybe I'm just looking at these guys and putting them on a pedestal that I shouldn't have put them on. And I think when you look around the college sphere, dudes that stand out to me right now is the guys that's been around the block a little bit, like a John Mateer at Oklahoma, like a Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt. The Commodores, by the way, they look legit. They look like a legit contender for the SEC. And what do they have that a lot of other teams in the SEC don't? A competent quarterback that's playing at a high level right now with experience. There's not a lot of quarterbacks like that. I just named 2, in Diego and Mateer. And so that, to me, puts Oklahoma and Vanderbilt at a level that may be higher than a Texas, maybe higher than a LSU, because of that quarterback position being so much better than everybody else right now. And I think that's going to be something to look out for as this conference play starts to develop. But speaking of developing, what is going on with these quarterbacks around the nation? And I'm curious to know if it's more so the offensive coordinators maybe making it too scheme specific and not allowing guys just to go out there and ball. Maybe that's an issue. Maybe it's just systematic, and too much of a system is causing these guys not to develop at a rate where they should be. I don't know what it is, but to me, it's an issue. And, it makes me think, I was thinking about what's on Moses' mind. I randomly started watching Lamar Jackson highlights recently from his days in Louisville. And the crazy thing is, if you watch those YouTube plays and you watch those highlights, especially that game against Syracuse, go back and watch that Lamar Jackson tape against Syracuse. He had over 600 yards total, 5 touchdowns. And the fact that scouts had the nerve to be like, he's probably a receiver at the next level. After watching that tape, to me is asinine. I mean, looking back on it, in hindsight, that is so crazy that scouts thought Lamar Jackson would be better at receiver than at quarterback at the next level after watching tape like that game against Syracuse. Because now you're looking around the college sphere now, and the guys that's supposed to be the top 10 picks in the Garrett Nussmeier and the Cade Klubniks and the Arch Mannings and all these guys that are been pushed on this pedestal, their tape looks bad. I mean, to be serious, their tape looks bad. And the fact that scouts are saying those are the guys that's supposed to be in the draft this year to be the top prospects compared to a guy in Lamar Jackson whose tape looks phenomenal against top tier teams. Mind you, after that Syracuse game, he went to Tallahassee and beat the brakes off of number 2 Florida State. And so it wasn't just against the bottom tier teams in the ACC. He did against the top teams as well. Everyone remembers that spectacular game against Clemson as well. And so it's just so crazy to me that Lamar Jackson was considered to be a receiver at the next level, despite putting what he put on tape compared to the guys nowadays that are considered to be the best quarterbacks coming out. Even if Drew Allard comes to mind from Penn State, he hadn't really showed anything on tape that really has jumped off the page to me either. So it's just, that was just one of my thoughts throughout this week of how the heck did people get Lamar Jackson wrong after what we saw him do with our own 2 eyes compared to the guys that are putting on tape that we're seeing with our own 2 eyes this year. It's just crazy to me how that all plays out. But That was just my little rant for today. Other than that, though, I can't wait for this scope of games this week. A lot of things happening around the college sphere. And man, I can't wait for that Miami-Florida matchup. That's going to be something to look out for. Can DJ Lagway bounce back? Is Miami the truth? I can't wait to see that play out for the battle of the state. But man, we got to see if this offense for Texas can get the ball rolling. Of course, there's been some injuries that has caused some issues, right? You can't neglect that. You can't just not factor in Emmett Mosley not playing ever yet. We haven't seen him. I think he is definitely going to help out in the run blocking game because he's just a strong physical receiver. And that's something Coach Sarkisian talked about during his pressure, saying that the receivers just need to hold on to their blocks a little bit more to maybe bounce these runs instead of a 7 to 8 yard gain to a 20, 25 explosive run. It all starts at the perimeter when it comes to trying to break out to that second level. So maybe Emmett Mosley helps there. Of course, DeAndre Moore Jr. having that concussion doesn't help. You're losing your top two backs in C.J. Baxter and Quintravion Wisner. That doesn't help Arch's development either. And it's not just about like having guys out there that's been there and done that. Because I made this point earlier this week. It's guys that you haven't even played with yet to build that chemistry. So yes, Quintravion's played. Yes, he is a considered vet, a returner, but he hasn't shared the backfield with CJ yet. And I think that matters. I think having that experience where you know what the game script is going to be like, know what the game flow is going to be like, that matters once conference play gets here. And so you're not confused about who gets the most touches, how do you split those carries? It would have already been figured out by this point in the season if they were both healthy. Same thing with the wide receiver rotation. I can put money on once everyone gets healthy in that wide receiver room, you're going to see more issues when it comes to chemistry because now you're trying to figure out who's going to play in what formation. Does Livingston stay on the field? He has to, right? And if he stays on the field, okay, so who does Emmett Mosley take off the field? Is it a DeAndre Moore Jr.? Do you take off Wingo from the field? I don't think so. You can. And so how does Emmett start to get snaps if Parker Livingston is playing so well? So these are all questions that are going to have to get figured out during SEC play that you should have figured out within the first 3 to 4 weeks of this non-conference schedule. And so with that being said, though, there's one more game left in the non-conference schedule against Sam Houston, Saturday night, under the lights. I cannot wait. And to talk about that matchup, I'm talking to Colton Foster. We're going over enemy lines as we discuss Texas versus Sam Houston State. All right, beautiful people. We're now going to go over enemy lines to talk to a Pearland Brody. Shout out to Dirty P, you know what I'm saying? Colton Foster. He is the sports reporter for the Huntsville Item. So, Colton, dude, big week for the Cats. They're going to DKR. Night game, by the way, under the lights. That's going to be exciting. But Sam Houston's coming in 0-3. You've been around this team all season long. What is something that kind of stood out to you about the Cats right now so far this season?
You know, one of the things about this team and really the program in general is that they have this, everybody uses the word culture, but they have a culture established. And it's transferred over from last year's 10-3 team to now this team that's 0-3. But that same culture was with this team when they went 3-9 in their first year transition. So every day, this team has gone into practice, head up, smiles on their face, ready to go into each week and ready to attack and ready to learn and just keep improving on what they have. And, you don't see that from a lot of teams that are 0-3. And I think, there's not as many guys that were here on that 22 team at this point. But, there's still some people that were here for the down years. And I think that's helping them get to this point because, there's not very many 0-3 teams that are going to go into a Texas game and think, okay, we could still go win 6 of our last 7 and make a bowl game.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like the springboard, right? To kind of see exactly where you're at. You want to come out of this game healthy. I know the Bearkats are trying to do that as well. Because, I mean, the bodies right now, you have a lot of them, and a lot of them are new. So just to get like a exact number, I know there has been some things flying around numbers-wise. How many new faces are on this roster from last season?
So from last year, there are 55 new is the number that Phil Longo has given us. 55 new faces, 22 of which were here for the spring, 33 of which came after the spring session for summer and then training fall camp.
Okay,
And
55 faces.
and on top of that, all 11 starters on defense that were starting in the R&L Carriers bowl game in New Orleans
Mhm.
are no longer a part of this program. They either transferred to UNT or others. Like there's a Virginia Tech and I want to say Duke in the
Mhm.
mix, and then or graduated. And so they've replaced basically every defensive starter and a handful of the second string guys as well.
And is that more so just Longo trying to get his guys in the program, or is that more so like the effects of NIL and the transfer portal where schools like Sam Houston is kind of losing a lot of good guys year after year?
It's more to the effect of the transfer portal. So when Casey Keeler left before the bowl game, the rest of the staff stayed in place, and he didn't. None of the guys on the coaching staff winded up going with him to Temple, which he said it was more of a he wanted guys that could help recruit that area rather than try to bring Texas to the Northeast. Um, but anyways, so the defensive coordinator got the gig at North Texas, and I want to say he took 7, 8, 9 of the guys with him, offensive, defensive. Everybody kind of followed him there. But then there's a few others like Isaiah Cash. He went to Virginia Tech, and then there's another corner. His name's blanking, and I want to say he went to Duke. So yeah, it was all kind of NIL. They came, showed out with the Sam team, and then I hate saying do things the right way, but it felt like they kind of used the transfer portal in a way to do it right, and it was, hey, we went and balled out here. Now let's go somewhere else for one last ride.
Yeah, that's the hard part. I feel like for schools like that, and we see it in our area with Texas State. People go ball out at Texas State. You talk about Virginia Tech. Their DE last year, Ben Bell, he transferred to Virginia Tech, and he sat out after the first 4 games. You know the rule: if you play more than 4 games, then that constitutes as a year. So after the 4th game, he's done. He's on the sidelines, healthy, but he knew he was going to transfer. So that's crazy to me. I feel like you're trying to say something. What do you want to say?
Yeah, so actually, I think that one broke for the Texas State Sam game.
Yeah.
He was on the sideline, and Keeler was like, "That's one grown ass man" or something, and then all of a sudden he's in a jersey and shorts on the sideline for that game.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, you're totally right. It was against Sam Houston. The first game he sat out. And so, I mean, that's unfortunately the results of the transfer portal. Schools like Sam Houston, schools like Texas State, who have Power 4 talent, they're now going to look at that as a springboard to getting them to the Power 4 schools.
And on the Sam side, sorry, I know you probably have more questions and transfer portal and all that, but on the Sam side, you have to really commend all of the athletes. Everyone that transferred played in the bowl game, despite going on visits. And I don't guess they were committed or not, but they're going on visits to all these places. But every single one of them came back and played in the bowl game because it was their mission to get a bowl win and that 10-win mark.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear that. And to me, that goes back to your first answer, right? Culture. That's what has been being built in Huntsville right now. And so let's talk about the team now. Let's talk about the faces that are on the roster. You were in that press conference, I'm guessing, with Coach Longo earlier this week. What exactly stood out to you when Coach talked?
Yeah, so they're just kind of getting everybody ready. One of the things that really stood out to me was he said to everybody, he said they're kind of meeting ideas, and what their meetings have revolved around this week is, everybody wants to play in the NFL. You're playing college football so that you can play in the NFL. So here's your opportunity to walk the walk. You're going against number 8 Texas. You're going against guys that are, at an SEC school. So here's your opportunity to go out there and show them that you belong on this stage. NFL scouts will be there. People are going to watch this game just because it's Texas. So now's your time to go out there and show them that you can ball as well as, as those guys, even though you're not at as big of a program or anything like that.
Yeah, it's an opportunity. And not only that, but also maybe opportunity to get picked up at another Power 4 school. If you see them ball out against the Texas tape, I think there's a couple dudes that's kind of shined against Texas. I know at San Jose State that I'm sure won't be at San Jose State next year after the way they played. And so with Sam Houston, like 0-3 start, being from that area, as you know, that's not really typical for the Bearkats. They're usually a really good football program. So what has kind of been the issues you felt like this season? I know, of course, the new faces is one, trying to build that camaraderie, but on the field, what have you seen kind of not been up to standard for Sam Houston State?
The offense just really hasn't found its way. They're still trying to figure things out. Longo noted in the press conference yesterday that the defense was ahead of the offense, which I thought was kind of interesting with him being kind of the offensive coordinator, de facto offensive coordinator, play caller. So I thought that was interesting. And the crazy part was there was more continuity on the offensive end too. You had a quarterback back, a couple of receivers. The running back room was completely wiped out. But, you had kind of more stability in that room. So I think people thought they were going to figure it out more. But it's just been that on both sides of the ball. The defense, they come together at times, but then in crunch time, they'll things will go the wrong way. We talked to Jameer Diaz today, and he kind of said, we're bend, don't break our defense. And that's what they were against Hawaii. They bend, and then they tried not to break, but they were able to punch it in. And, they really had a chance to win that game at Hawaii, but they were on quarterback number 3 as a true freshman. So kind of, they were dealt a bad hand and had to go out there and play with it.
Yeah, you spoke about the defense being ahead of the offense and not expecting that because of the play caller. That sounds a lot like Texas right now.
Yeah.
Right? A lot like Texas. With Coach Sark, you expect that the offense will be up to par by week 4, but they haven't been. And so is there anything that you kind of see or you've heard from Sam Houston about maybe defensively trying to make a statement and seeing that Arch has been struggling, not letting Arch become comfortable against this defense?
Yeah, so that's been their big thing the last few weeks is being able to apply pressure to quarterbacks. And Longo noted that they didn't really need the sacks as much, but they wanted the hurries, make the quarterback, uncomfortable, make them make a bad decision. And so that's been kind of their focal point is, being able to disrupt things rather than get them to the ground. Now, ultimately, yeah, you want to get them to the ground, but if you can make a guy like Arch roll out or a guy like a Maverick McIver roll out, then you can, maybe force a bad decision here or there. And they did that against Luke Weaver. And Mon Allen got a pick 6 and put him within 7 late. So it's just one of those things that if they can get constant pressure or just be in a quarterback's face and just make him just halfway uncomfortable or halfway think about, hey, if I don't have this ball out in 3 seconds, then I might be on the ground. I think that's really going to be the key this week. Now, if they can, that'll be a different story.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be interesting to watch because Arch has already kind of started to speed the clock up in his mind. So if you start to put pressure on him, who knows how much it will be sped up even more? Because we've seen it. We've seen it against UTEP last week. They weren't getting sacks per se, like you just mentioned, but they were getting to the quarterback and making him move the pocket. We got a lot of TFLs, I will say that, last week as well. So that is something to look out for. They can put that pressure on Arch. So the other thing I just want to talk about on the side of the field, of course, offensively, what has been kind of like the struggle? You talked about against Hawaii having to play a true freshman, but now that he's not the guy anymore. So who is the quarterback? Let me know a little scouting report about what this Sam Houston State offense looks like.
All signs point that it'll be Hunter Watson.
Okay.
But I take that. I say 99% chance it's Hunter Watson that runs out as the first quarterback on the field. Now, do I think a second quarterback will come out at some point? Yes. There's Longo in his press conferences has said, I believe it was after the UNLV game, that they would prefer the quarterback to not be, for lack of the playmaker. He would rather the quarterback dump the ball off to a guy that can go out and make a play. But Hunter Watson can make plays with his legs. I want to say he had like a 50-plus yard rush against Western Kentucky for a touchdown. He's a guy that's going to go out there and he's going to give you 110% every time he's on the field. He missed a couple games last year. He gets beat up. But that's kind of what Longo wants to avoid is your guy being hurt. But as we all know, Longo was tabbed as an air raid guy. So everybody thinks he's going to throw the ball. That really hasn't been the case. They've been pretty 50-50 this year. But their second string and Mabry Matoyer followed him back from Wisconsin. He's a Woodlands product. So he's kind of back in that hometown, as much as you want to call 40-mile difference hometown. But he's kind of back. And so he has that kind of ability to throw the ball that people think Longo wants to do, but his decision making hasn't been necessarily the way that they want it to go. So I could see both of them going, but no, Hunter should get to start if he's healthy. He missed the Hawaii game, but he was deemed inactive. And then when Matoyer went down and they were on their true freshman third string quarterback, they wound up putting Watson in pads for the fourth quarter as the emergency. Longo noted, he probably could have played if they needed him. But he also said in the offseason in training camp was that, sometimes the guy at 75%, the next guy up at 100% could be better. Mm-hmm. So I think there's that mindset of, hey, if we think this guy's better right now, they're going to go with him. So I think, truthfully, Hunter starts, but what happens after the first drive, maybe flip a coin.
Okay, so Texas fans could expect a little 2-quarterback rotation from Sam Houston State Saturday night. And that's kind of like alluding to my last question, night game. What is the vibe around that? Like, not just playing at DKR, not just playing against Texas, but playing at night. Has that been a topic of conversation in Huntsville?
Not really. I think it's been more on the playing at DKR. So one of the unique things about Conference USA is in October they play midweek nights. So 4 of your 12 games are already at night. Last year, I want to say they probably played like 8 games at night. They've already played, 3? No, all their games so far have been at night. So obviously the atmosphere is going to be different at DKR than it is in Western Kentucky or at Shell Energy Stadium where they hosted UNLV or, in Hawaii. So, that's going to be different. But I don't think they're really letting it kind of affect them. I think they're trying to, they're having the approach of it's just another game and we need to go out there and just ball and play what we can do and do what we can do against, this team and just go out there and show them Sam Houston football.
And you kind of alluded to it, but playing in a stadium like DKR is nothing like what they played in earlier this year. Have they tried to prepare for that crowd noise at all in some particular way, or do you know?
Yeah, I mean, they've done the speaker thing, but
okay.
I think yesterday Longo noted, like, you can try, but you can't really mimic anything like that. I'm trying to think back in 22, and was it 22? Yeah, 22, they played at A&M, so you kind of, I guess maybe you can pull from that, but really nobody on that team is still around except for 1 or 2. So, it's just one of those things that I think once you get in, maybe you hope you get off to a fast start and then you can kind of quiet the crowd a little bit and hope that you just stay ahead for the rest of the game.
Heck, last week you didn't need to do all that. They were booing. So, I mean, the other team didn't have to do anything. They were just – the offense was playing that bad. So, maybe that happens again this time around. Last one for you, Colton. One guy that Texas fans should be looking out for when it comes to Sam Houston State that maybe is a dude that we'll be seeing at the Power 4 level next year or maybe seeing an NFL draft. What's one guy on this roster that really is someone to look out for?
I mean, truthfully, I think at this point you probably have to go either like Iman Allen or Jameer Diaz.
Okay. Both
have kind of been breakout guys for this team. I want to pick an offensive guy so bad, but nothing has shown me to do it. Diaz got a sack against Hawaii, picked up a scoop and score against Western Kentucky, and has really grown into his role. And Iman Allen has 2 interceptions for this team on the year and a pick 6 against Hawaii. So, those would be the 2 guys that I would keep an eye on for. I think those would be, the ones to, maybe move up if they. I think Allen is out after this year, but Diaz, if he, has a good year, I could see him transferring to a bigger Power 4 program or a smaller Power 4 program.
I know Texas fans are like, of course, defensive guys. We're trying. This is our last chance for the offense to get the ball rolling, and you name 2 defensive guys to look out for.
And that's what Sam's hung their hat on for so many years is defense. I mean, once Ryan Carty departed as the offensive coordinator, it's been a revolving door. They brought in an offensive coordinator after that 21 season, and Keeler wound up demoting him after week 7. Then he left. Then they had Brad Cornelison the last 2 years, and the offense never really got going. So, it's just one of those things that over the last, 4 years, 3 years, 3.5 years now, they've really just hung their hat on defense and really even, that's been the key, and that's been the mainstay for this team.
Well, I can't wait for Saturday. Colton, you got a score prediction? Do you do those? Some people don't do them.
I don't really have one off the top of my head, but I would have to. I did a piece with Eric Henry, and at the end I said I think that this is kind of the get right game for Texas. So I think that Vegas might be onto something. So I predict it'll probably be kind of that 49-3, 52-3 kind of game where Texas figures it out against a defense that has been pretty bad against the pass this year.
Okay, that's interesting to know. So I was going to ask you, you may not give a score, but do you think they cover? So you think Texas does cover?
What is it now? I
think it's 49.5.
49 now?
I think. It may be 43. I don't know exactly.
Last I saw when it opened at 42, but let's see. But yeah, just think great teams cover, so we'll see.
But I say if it's 42, it's 39.5.
39. I think they cover. I think they cover on the fact that there's a chance that the Texas offense doesn't get to that point total.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So you think Sam Houston covers?
Yeah, I think Sam will cover. I mean, 39 is just so many points especially for an offense that hasn't really clicked. But I'm saying this, and Arch is probably going to throw for 507 touchdowns. So. We'll
No, trust me. I kind of agree with you. I don't know if they can put up 40 points. So watch, we'll both be having egg on our face by Saturday night. So we'll see what happens. But Colton, thank you so much for joining Mose Knows, bro. Where can people find you and your work?
So on itemonline.com is our website, and then you can find me at Twitter at Colton Foster 98, I think. I don't know. I try to forget it.
Smart man right there. Thank you, Colton, for the time, bro. Can't wait to see what happens on Saturday.
For sure. Me too. Thanks for having me.
Always appreciate my guys hopping on the pod. Thank you so much, Colton, for sharing your knowledge. A lot of cool things that he said, though, especially about that defense being kind of the pride and joy of his Sam Houston Bobcat football team. So it's going to take a pretty good effort for Texas to get this ball rolling offensively. And so if that is a strength for the Bearkats, it's going to be pretty uplifting to see if Arch can move the ball well, if they get the second and third strings out there by the beginning of the fourth quarter. That's going to say a lot heading into this bye week and then, of course, to the Swamp. And so I'm looking at the sports books right now, and that spread is 39. So I think we discussed 39.5. With Colton. I'm looking at it right now. It says 39. I don't know, man. I don't know if Texas covers that. They haven't even put up 40 points all year long. So I don't really know where they're getting this line from. But, hey, maybe Vegas knows that Arch is going to get things right this week. And so maybe that's a good thing, huh? Because 40, that's a lot of points for this offense to put up. So I don't really bet on Texas. So it's not my money. But if you are putting US dollars, 39, I may have to take Sam Houston to cover. I am interested to see, though, if this defense finally gets a shutout. That's something that Ethan Burke has been preaching every time they talk to us is we got to be perfect. We got to have a shutout, and we haven't had a shutout yet. So does Texas complete the shutout? It sounds like there's a possibility. The way Colton was talking, his offense doesn't look that great. 2-quarterback system. So when you do 2 quarterbacks against Texas, that's going to be a recipe for disaster. So, yeah, we'll see what happens on Saturday night. Hey, thank y'all so much for tuning in and listening to my little rant about Lamar Jackson earlier. I know that was so random, but I don't know. It was just a random thought to my mind this week when I was watching the highlights. I'm like, bro, they really thought he should be a receiver after watching him do all this. And mind you, all the top quarterbacks in this year's draft doesn't look great. But who am I? I'm not a scout. I'm not a GM. I don't know ball. I guess that's what it is. But thank y'all so much for listening to the Mose Knows podcast or watching, depending on where you're taking this content from. Remember, if you are liking this content, please share, please comment, please like, please subscribe. I really appreciate y'all for taking the time out of your day to listening in on this podcast. And I hope y'all just enjoy the game on Saturday, Texas versus Sam Houston State. We'll see what happens. But y'all be easy and be blessed. And I hope y'all have a sensational day.